I was born with the curiosity to explore the realms of darkness, to seek out the elusive shadows and question their existence, their never-ending convolution with the light. All things were born from this darkness. Question everything. Find your own truth, engage all mysteries, open your mind, and join me on my journey through the darkness.
Chapter 3. The Hockomock Swamp, Freetown, Native Hauntings. Two teenage boys who grew up near the Hockomock Swamp decided to venture into the woods late one night. They were teasing one another about the girls they liked when the sound of footsteps brought them to a complete standstill. The two boys listened but didn't hear anything. They both recall it was as if the once noisy world had just gone mute. The eeriness of the silence and the paranoia of what might have been causing the footsteps sent both boys into a panic. They decided to stop their late-night excursion and head home. They walked faster than normal, their flashlight dancing wildly through the dense trees and foliage. They both stopped again as the light showed a human figure standing in the trees in front of them. It was just a brief flash, and the boys struggled to see through the shadows but couldn't find the shape again. But they were both certain of what they saw. They picked up their pace, both feeling as if they were in grave danger. They started to hear footsteps all around them, but could not see anything. They didn't dare stop. That's when things got even weirder. Throughout the woods, they could hear what they can only describe as ancient dialect. It was coming from all around them, and it seemed to be chanting in a weird, ritualistic manner. Both boys felt threatened and ran out of the woods as fast as they could. The boys retold their story, saying that there are only two possible explanations for the occurrence, and neither of them was comforting. The area was notorious for ritualistic cult practices, so it could have been a psychotic cult member terrorizing them, or a paranormal experience. One of the boys said in an interview, quote, "It was way too elaborate to be a normal person just trying to freak us out. If it was a human, he was extremely sick in the head. Nighttime in there is a world in itself. I do not advise venturing in after dark." Unquote. A resident of Freetown says that she would go on walks every morning and experience some strange things while on these walks. One morning, it was very early and still a little dark out. As the sun was just beginning to peak above the horizon, a woman driving a car turned to me screaming as she sped past. She sounded frightened. The panic in her voice made my skin crawl, and I knew there was something very wrong. Although she was driving, she leaned out the window with both arms and stared into my eyes screaming, "Help me." I watched as she stopped her car up ahead and pulled to the side of the road. I hurried to offer some assistance, but was surprised by her strange demeanor. She opened the car door in a daze, not saying a word, just looking straight into the forest. I stopped in my tracks and asked if she needed help, but it was as if she couldn't hear me. I watched as she disappeared into the woods. It was at this time that I felt very uncomfortable, so I ended my walk early and went back home, still confused by the woman's actions. The next morning, the events of the previous day had left my mind, until I saw the woman's car still sitting on the side of the road with the door standing wide open. The Freetown Reservation is a very quiet, secluded place. I have lived there for more than 10 years and have experienced more bizarre things in that 10 years than I have my entire life. The woods are some of the most dense and difficult to navigate in Massachusetts. The area has had a run of strange occurrences. I live on the main road within the Indian Reservation, a hotspot for paranormal activity. When I first moved here, I was unfamiliar with the ghost stories and had never heard of the Bridgewater Triangle. I used to walk up and down the dark streets at night and often found solace in the woods to think. It was at these times that I began to question the things I was experiencing. I had heard strange noises in the woods, especially at night. moans and screaming, sometimes chanting. I'd always brushed it off, thinking it was some animal I was unfamiliar with. After all, I was new to country living. But the more I heard it, the more I questioned its origins. One night in particular, the screaming sounded very close and made the hair on the back of my neck stand straight up. It was a terrifying sound. I had brought my camera with me to take a few shots of the sunset a few hours earlier, so I thought I would snap a few photos to see if the flash would illuminate the woods enough for me to see what exactly was making that sound. After a couple photos, I didn't see anything unusual. Later that night, I was looking through the digital photos I had taken of the sunset when I came across the photos of the woods. I stared in disbelief at what I was seeing. Within the photos were faces. They were partially transparent, and some looked smoky, but they were clearly faces. I could make out expressions, and the most terrifying part was that they looked as if they were screaming. Another eyewitness account is of a family that recently purchased a home on the outskirts of the forest. The father believed that he felt as if there was something in the woods. He was drawn to the place but uncertain as to why. The home is situated on a large lot of land, so the father felt compelled to keep horses. One day, the daughter went outside to the barn to feed her horse and noticed a very intricate braid in the horse's mane. She had no idea how it had gotten there. She went in and asked her mother and father if they had braided her horse's mane, and they were just as shocked as she had been. Neither of them had done it. Within a few days, the braid had come out and the mane was back to normal. It went on like this for some time. Every once in a while, she would go out and feed her horse, and that beautiful, intricate braid would be in the mane again. The horses slept in the barn at night, and there was never any sign of an intruder, but they couldn't make sense as to who was doing this. Around Christmas that year, the girl's aunt and uncle came to stay for the holidays. They were all sitting at the table when the aunt said that she had seen a young girl dressed like a Native American go into the horse barn. They all went out to find the horse with a new braid in its mane. Hours earlier, when they put the horses up for the night, the braid wasn't there. When spring came, the father was outside tending to the lawn when the neighbor approached for a friendly chat. They talked about the weather and cars and typical things that people talk about. But then the neighbor told the father about the land that the house and barn was built upon. She said before the home was built, they would often see a Native American girl walk out of the woods and up to where the barn now stood. Then she would just disappear. It turns out that the land that the home was built on was the site of bloodshed during the War of King Philip, the deadliest war in the history of European settlement in North America. The grounds of the entire Bridgewater Triangle is said to be cursed by this battle. Many believe that the curse is the cause of all the paranormal and bizarre activity. The Shad Factory Mills ruins, also known as the Palmer River Manufacturing Company and the Orleans Manufacturing Company in the town of Rehoboth, was built in 1810. The factory caught on fire in 1831. It was then rebuilt but destroyed in yet another fire in 1884. Although in ruins, witnesses claim to see the factory ablaze even though it has long been leveled. Multiple apparitions have been seen roaming the grounds, including a hooded man. Screams are heard coming from the ruins at all hours, and strange, unidentifiable white lights dance around and glow within the surrounding woods. All whom venture near the ruins report feelings of sadness and pain, and feelings of being watched. In 1845, the one-room Horbine Schoolhouse was built in the town of Rehoboth. Although operation ceased in 1937, people still claim to see children in the schoolhouse and playing on the property. Some have reported seeing a strange reddish glow inside and hear the voices of children attending school. One of the scariest eyewitness accounts tell of a woman who heard a teacher teaching inside the building. When she peered in through the window, she saw an entire classroom of kids and a middle-aged teacher dressed in 19th century clothing. Being a teacher herself, she was excited to join in and observe what she thought was an historical reenactment. She went around to the front door, but it was locked. She thought that strange since it was a one-room schoolhouse. She knocked, but no one answered, and she no longer heard the noises coming from within. She was shocked and in disbelief when she returned to the window, and the schoolhouse was completely empty. There was nowhere for all the people to disappear to without opening the door, which she had been standing in front of the entire time. She started back to her car, but turned to look one more time at the schoolhouse, and there, standing in the window, was the teacher. The eyewitnesses watched as she disappeared into a cloud of smoke. The area of Freetown seems to have the largest number of hauntings and reported paranormal occurrences. Even the Freetown Police Department has a ghost roaming its corridors. The ghost of a female dispatcher that died in the building has been seen as a cloudy figure walking through the offices. The woman was the only one working in the building on the night that she died. Freetown is generally a quiet little town, so only one dispatcher is needed to cover the midnight shift. The officers on duty thought it had been a slow night and didn't think anything of it until they returned to the office for a shift change and found that the woman had died hours earlier. Since the hauntings began after her death, most of the officers claim that it is her spirit that roams the building. Freetown hosts a number of frightening incidents, many of which hail from the Freetown State Forest. The forest is massive and has winding trails going throughout, some of which are large enough for a car to go through. Most people don't travel the trails, especially at night, but those who have come out of the forest with tales of terror and strange occurrences. A man using the paths as a shortcut to get home before dark became lost on the twisting trails. Night fell upon him and he was nervous because, although he had taken the shortcut many times before, he had somehow managed to get lost this time. He felt like something wasn't right. He sped through the forest in hopes of seeing something familiar. He didn't know if it was his nerves or if it was the lights casting strange shadows on the trees, but he swore he saw something peering out of the woods, darting in and out of the trees and keeping pace with him as he drove 40 miles per hour. He slowed down to see if the thing he was seeing was the shadows the headlights were creating, but as the vehicle slowed, a dark figure stepped out from the woods. It was solid, black, and very ominous. The man accelerated as fast as he could. He remembered stories of people whom had ventured into the forest at night, along the same paths, and their cars breaking down for no apparent reason or the lights mysteriously going out. As he passed, the figure vanished into the darkness. Another horror story from the Freetown State Forest was witnessed by a group of people who were hiking the trails. They were joking around and having a few laughs when one of them pointed at a figure coming out of the woods in front of them. At first they all stood still and waited nervously. There was something odd about the way it moved. It turned and began walking into their direction, directly ahead of them, one of its arms outstretched and reaching. As it got closer, they could see that it was an old woman, but she appeared like a zombie. Her clothes were torn, exposing parts of her naked flesh, and her eyes were all white and glazed over. She was covered in dirt as if she had been buried, and thick black blood poured from her mouth. The group ran back to their car, but was surprised to see the woman running at them with incredible speed. They jumped in, screaming as the woman reached into the car at them, her face twisted in hate. And then she vanished. The Ledge, as it has been called, is one of the scariest hotspots for the paranormal activity. It is the site where many suicides have occurred. Some say it is cursed and can cause people to take their own lives. Some say the negativity is so thick that it can be hard to breathe when atop the ledge. A couple went to the ledge as a romantic excursion. Both were happy and in love, talking about the future and their hopes for the life they were sharing, when the man threw himself from the cliff in front of his girlfriend and died. The man had no history of mental illness, anxiety, or depression, and was known for a sunny disposition. Many people claim to feel a heaviness come over them, or a blackness. They report unexplained feelings of guilt and sadness, and some even felt themselves being pulled toward the edge of the cliff, as if something was inside their body controlling them. One man staggered at the edge and forced himself back, crying and trembling in fear. He said he had no idea why he was trying to jump off, but suddenly felt pushed, compelled, and horribly depressed. In the pond below the ledge, a man and a few of his buddies were fishing and taking it easy when they all witnessed 6 or 7 people coming straight down the ledge toward them. The herd of people would disappear and reappear in different places atop the ledge, falling and screaming. The echoes of the screams followed the men as they ran their boat to land and abandoned it and all their belongings. They couldn't get to the truck fast enough. As they sped away, the screams echoed across the water and through the woods. The ledge is also the site of mysterious spook lights that dance around. Witnesses have also seen a campfire burning bright atop the ledge, but when approached, there is no sign of the campfire, no ashes. The only thing that remains is the lingering smell of the burnt wood.